constraint-based sketching dimension. So let's start with a line with automatic constraints on and snap to grid. But let's make this length 25.5 and we'll have an angle of 35 degrees. Now let me just move this a little. You notice when I move it, incidentally, you will see that it will either curve end will line up with the grid position. So let's just put it there. Now, if I select this line again, what we don't get with the constraint sketcher is we do not get its attributes of angle or its attribute of length come up. For those, we have to add constraint, a dimension constraint, so 25.5, and let's have a look at an angle, 35 degrees. So I've added those two dimensional constraints, but I can still move the line around in any position because it's not fixed in X and it's not fixed in Y. That's for both the curve and also for the curve ends. So let me now add an end to show you what I mean. If I add a dimension to this curve end, to this line, this Y axis, what that means is that I can't move it. I can't move the line in X direction, but I can move it in the Y direction. Because of the angle, I can't rotate the line. It can only really translate. If I now want to add another dimension to this curve end, let's now lock it down to the X axis. And now what you see is I get a dark blue end and a dark blue line, meaning that the line itself is constrained for its length and for its position on the right hand side here, but it still is it's dark blue down there because of that angle. So really that line is now fully constrained. I can select either end and it won't move, and itself it won't move. If I delete this 35 though, although that point is constrained and the length is constrained, I can, if I select the curve, I can't do anything with the curve, but if I select the point, you notice that the point is in a light blue color. If I select the point, then I can actually rotate the curve around by moving the point to any position. Let's undo. Despite this curve not being fully defined because we've deleted the 35-degree angle, nonetheless I can still move the line quite easily. I can say it's 20 and I can say it's 7. So changes can be done really very fast, 26, and it simply is a matter of selecting a dimension and keying in a new value, so 10 for instance, which is a fast way to change geometry whilst maintaining design intent. Equally, if I wanted to change the angle from 35 to 40, it's really very fast. I can delete at any time. So I can move a point. Now if I select this curve end, because I've got automatic constraints on and snap to grid, if I now take this point, I can drag it along its line, and where you see it snap to the grid, that snapping, that highlighting adds a constraint. So now the end has gone dark blue, and if we look at the constraints, you can see I've got now a coincident constraint. So by selection of the drop down arrow, you can see I've now got a coincident constraint and a dimensional constraint. By right clicking on the icon, I can delete it. I've still got an endpoint constraint, a coincident constraint to the x-axis, meaning I can drag it along But what I can't do is I can't move, select the curve and move, translate, because its ends are constrained. I can only take the end, the curve end, and move it along the x-axis. If I wanted to constrain it, I could do it with a length constraint. So no longer can it move. I can change the length constraint to, let's say, 35. But if I wanted a particular angle, so let me add an angular constraint. It's gone red, meaning that, and I get this warning saying basically it's over constrained. So in this particular case, you have to make a decision as to which dimension you no longer require. So let's select the 35 and delete. It's no longer red, so let's round this value to 35. So by dimensions and a curve end constrained to the x-axis, the line is now fully constrained. Whilst this sketch is clearly underdefined, if I add constraints to this width of this slot of 10 and to the depth of the slot of 9, just those quick little constraints clearly help if I'm now manipulating this sketch to suit my design. If I want to change the width very quickly, it's just a change of number. If I want to change the width position, I can use the grid just by changing the position. The height I can change just by using the grid. So very quickly, these two dimensions, I feel, have added great value to the intent of this shape of the block.